Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Welcome to our book discussion and book reading with Catherine Adel West. My name is Delana Benakama, and I'm the founder and the lead of the city's Black History Month Committee, and I'm also the Equity and Inclusion Coordinator for the City of Santa Monica. And tonight's event is brought to you by the Black History Month Committee in collaboration with the Santa Monica Public Library, which offers some really great resources that my colleague Karen will be talking about in a minute. And I am just so excited that Catherine is joining us to discuss the Two Lives of Sara. We had an excellent discussion with her 2 years ago when we invited her to talk about her debut novel, Saving Ruby King. So I can't wait to hear from her tonight about the Two Lives of Sara. So I'll turn it over quickly to Karen, and also wanted to mention that we are joined by Dr. Alisa Orduña, who is going to facilitate tonight's conversation. And Dr. Orduña is a beloved former colleague, and we'll tell you more about her in just a second. So I'm going to turn it over to Karen really quickly.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited to be here as I'm talking and letting one more person in. So nice to see all of you. We are excited to partner on this program. And it's one of many programs that we have here at the library. We have a number of book groups. We often have authors come. This week, we actually discussed Walter Mosley's book, Trouble Is What I Do, with our mystery book group, which is an amazing read. And what an author he is. So if you haven't had a chance to read him, you should, Walter Mosley. Again, we have lots of programs going on. You can find all our programs listed on snpl.org, which is our library's website. In addition to classes, we of course have our collections. We have literacy programming going on, and tutoring and computer programs coming up, and all kinds of great things. We have tax assistance, a little bit of everything. Most of our programs right now are in person, and we are doing a few virtual. Just this discussion and some of our book groups are virtual to kind of appeal to those people that want to come to our programs but don't want to leave their homes or are stuck at work. So I don't want to take up too much time. I want to leave time for our author and our discussion with Alisa and Catherine. A few housekeeping items. Please stay muted while the discussion is going on. There'll be time for questions after the discussion. And if you have a burning question and you're afraid you're going to forget it, please put it in the chat and I will track that and make sure that everyone sees that so that question can get answered. And I think we mentioned a little bit earlier, but for those of you that just got here, it's fine to leave your cameras on. We're happy to see you. And again, just leave it muted so we don't hear background noise. And I think that's about it on my part. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. So just to give you a background about Catherine Adel West, she was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, where she currently resides. She graduated with both her bachelor's and her master's of science in journalism from the University of Illinois, Urbana. Her sophomore novel, which we'll talk about today, The Two Lives of Sara, is a companion book to her debut novel, Saving Ruby King. And her work is published in a bunch of great places, including the Black Fox Literary Magazine, 521, Better Than Starbucks, and a plethora of other places. And so Kathy enjoys writing, editing, and traveling. Her website is catherineadelwest.com, and we'll drop that in the chat for you later. And so now I want to introduce our facilitator, Dr. Orduña. She is a practitioner, policy analyst, collaborator, and thought leader in homelessness services in the United States. I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Orduña at the City of Santa Monica when she was the senior advisor to the city manager on homelessness. And so, it's her life's mission to reimagine neighborhoods as beloved communities where residents experience belonging and have access to resources to thrive. She has a very long and impressive resume. I won't read it all tonight, but just know that she will do a great job with this facilitation, and I cannot wait. So I will turn it over to you, Dr. Orduña.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It's so great to see current, former, lifelong friends and colleagues. I'm excited to be here. And Catherine, I think you have a passage that you wanted to start us off with in reading, or are you ready to jump right into questions? You tell me.
You know what? I'll go ahead and read a short passage. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I greatly appreciate it, and I don't take it for granted. I'll go ahead and, as I said, read a short passage, and then, Dr. Orduña and I will do what we do, which is hopefully make you laugh, but make you think at the same time. The passage that I'm reading is from the beginning of chapter 2 of the Two Lives of Sara. And scene. Okay. Naomi said you'd likely be arriving today. Come on in, sweetheart, she says. The night's so ungodly dark. I wonder if I'm still dreaming on a bus southbound from Memphis. But the warmth of her hands on mine signals I'm awake. Most folks around here call me Mama Sugar. Don't ask me where that name came from. The scarlet poplar smells of melted butter, bread, saffron, and the bodies of hardworking men. On each side of the large white wooden door, Mama Sugar opens 3 windows to channel whatever meager coolness the now falling rain creates. So you're Sara, am I right? You like to be called anything other than that? No, ma'am. I remain near the threshold. To my left, the living room, and in front of me are stairs, and to my right, a small hallway leading to a large kitchen at the back of the house. There's a weak rumble of thunder. Well, what my niece Naomi call you back home? Or your mama, your daddy? Sara. Everyone calls me Sara. And see.
Thank you so much for that, Catherine. As you were going, I had my book open. I was like, already on the next page.
I gotta leave you wanting more.
You do. And I have to tell you, this is a book I wish I had on summer vacation or somewhere where you could just sit and read it, expansively. And so, but I had to read it like in fists and starts. And every time I thought I knew what the plot was, I would pick it back up again and like, oh wow, wait, what's happening now? So it really is a book that keeps you engaged and really tells our story on multiple ways so beautifully. So first, I just want to say thank you for writing this and just the effort and creativity that you put into it. But let's get started. And one of the things I appreciate about this book is you really uplifted several of our Black literary luminaries, from Richard Wright, Zora Neale Hurston, James Baldwin, Richard Ellison, and Petrie. The Harlem Renaissance was just so prevalent in this book and uplifting their stories. And so I'm just curious, who are the Black literary artists or artists that influenced your initiation into writing and the launching of your own literary career? And so please tell us a little bit about yourself and that.
So I've been writing all my life. Not all my life. I wasn't like, a 2-month-old prodigy. But, I've been writing ever since I was really young. Let's just say that. And I think for me, because my mom was a reading English and literature teacher, retired principal, education was a huge part of me and my brother's upbringing, as well as my extended family were heavily into education. I have the gene, but I just don't got the patience. So for me, I wanted to write or somehow make writing a part of my life. I just didn't know how to do it and commoditize it in a way, because it's like, great, I want to be a writer, but this isn't rent. Like, I'm not doing the whole Vie Bohème lifestyle, so I had to find a way to incorporate my passion for writing into, a way to make a living. So I ended up becoming an editor. And that was okay, but it wasn't really fulfilling what I wanted to do. So then flash forward, I'm like 32 years old. I know. I don't look at it. It's fine. Everything's fine. So I flash forward to my early 30s and I start writing again after I want to say at least 5 to 10 years of not writing, just small short stories, nothing crazy. And I was talking to a friend about, I was going to write this short story, and we were at a wedding reception, and she's like, oh, that would make a great book. I said, oh, yeah, it would. And, as stated, I have 2 degrees in journalism. So my silly behind thought like, oh, it's super easy for me to write a book. Like, I'm a journalist. Like, how hard is it to write a book? Yeah, no, dude, seriously, ladies and gentlemen, no. It was crazy. It was so difficult. It took me 5 years to write my debut novel, Saving Ruby King. The Two Lives of Sara, it didn't take as long, but getting back to my influences, there were a great many. I think for me, one of the people who I really accredit my love of writing and my passion and influences heavily in the way that I write, Zora Neale Hurston. Absolutely. How It Feels to Be Colored Me was my introduction into her. And then Their Eyes Were Watching God. And a great many of her other, essays, and like she was absolutely prolific, and she didn't get the flowers while she was here, which always angers me. But she was a major influence in my life. James Baldwin, absolutely. The problem, and I always regret, like James Baldwin, I think died in the late 80s or early 90s, but I'm like 11 or 10. I don't really know who James Baldwin is at this point. So I don't find out until I'm a young adult, and I'm reading Giovanni's Room. And yes, Adria, I know about that whole thing with Alice Walker and giving her a head. She didn't even have a headstone. Alice Walker literally had to do Alice Walker wrote, I think, like a whole essay about how she had to do a bunch of research to find out when Zora Neale Hurston was buried, because she literally died a pauper. You know what I mean? Like with no money, didn't nobody really know. And so big ups to Alice Walker. But getting back to it with James Baldwin, when I discovered James Baldwin, who I heavily mentioned, as well as Zora Neale Hurston, who I heavily mentioned in the book, I was like, bro, what have I been doing with my life? Like, hell, why am I even writing? Like, I should just put it down. Like, I don't really deserve. I mean, Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, Ann Petrie, and then Ann Petrie, I didn't discover till my 30s. Like, what the hell? Like, you know what I mean? Like, these are people who should be required reading when we're younger. Like, I shouldn't be in my 20s and 30s discovering these people. Like, I should be 10, 11, 13, you know what I mean? Like, I should be figuring out who these people are instead of having to read the freaking Scarlet Letter or Moby Dick and just being bored to tears. You know what I mean? Like, I inhaled The Street by Ann Petrie. Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. If Beale Street Could Talk, and that's the thing, Dr. Orduña, if Beale Street Could Talk, I was gonna incorporate it into The Two Lives of Sara. Wow. The Two Lives of Sara takes place in the early 60s. If Beale Street Could Talk wasn't published till 74.
Wow.
So I couldn't do it. But I could incorporate The Fire next time. So I was happy with that. But when I tell you I almost threw my book across the room, when I looked at the copyright for If Beale Street Could Talk, I saw that it was published in 74. I was so, because I had all the ideas of how I was gonna Black love and Black justice, and I'm gonna weave this in. It's gonna be my opus, and then it was so it was published in 74. I was looking at Heaven and James Baldwin really, bro? You couldn't have done me a solid and wrote this 20 years ago? Really? So, but to answer your question, those were some of the people, and I'm going to be quiet now. So.
No, you're not, because we're going to keep this conversation going.
Yes.
And the beauty is, you're right. It's almost like we had this great canon of literary writers, and like you said, many died poor, unknown, or people had to quote unquote rediscover them. And what's so beautiful about tonight, you being here, is representation matters, and access to authors and the stories that they tell and their life journey. So we can celebrate and give you your flowers while you are here. And so just glad,
please.
when we think of the wins that we were able to do. And so, I'm really curious. I was excited when I read the cover of the book and I was like, oh, it takes place in Memphis, which is where my family has roots. And, thinking about what so many stories talk about how people left the South, with Jim Crow to leave, post-Reconstruction, racial violence, lynching, and just and wanting more and more opportunities. And so we had the Great Migration where thousands of Black families moved north, northeast, Midwest, out west here to California. But in your story, Sara does the reverse. She moves from Chicago to Memphis. And so I'm just curious, like, what was the inspiration around this story, and what's the significance of Memphis to you, or to the story, or just to your plight around social justice overall?
Doctor, I love the fact that you give my decision to place this book in Memphis such great weight. Let me tell you like the nitty gritty as to why it happened the way it happened. When I wrote Saving Ruby King, some of you may have read it, some of you may not have, but I'm not telling you any spoilers. There's just near the end, this section in Saving Ruby King where Sara is sitting with a young Lebanon in a church. And I write about how she went to Memphis for a time and she fell in love, but things don't always work out. And I was just like feeling myself and just being all like super poetic and stuff, and was just like, oh, this sounds so pretty, like, oh, I'm such a genius, let me just write this, because I didn't know that Saving Ruby King was going to get published. It was the first book I ever wrote, ever. Rarely do authors get an agent on the same book, let alone get that book published, and then let alone have that book gain any kind of recognition. So then all of a sudden I got a bunch of people asking me, well, what happened? And I'm like, I don't know.
I'm sorry, a bunch of people like our colleague Delana over there.
Yeah. Now look, I ain't gonna lie. I did get messages. I got some multiples from Delana, but and I'm gonna just say, because I love her to death. Like, I've known Delana 10 years. But it was that push to kind of have me be like, what, I remember when I was writing it, I was like, oh, that would be like a really nice story. What does happen? But it's my first book. I'm not thinking anything's gonna come of it. And then when something comes of it, and then my publisher is like, oh yeah, Sara's story will be interesting, I'm literally back into the corner of corners. So I didn't have any kind of deep connection with Memphis other than what I superficially knew about Memphis, which was more than what? Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, right? Oh, we've known each other nearly for 15 years. Girl, Black don't crack though. Like, it really don't. Anyway, so I just knew superficially, unless you live in Memphis, superficially, Memphis is a place with good food, even greater barbecue, good music. Like, that's the only thing I knew. So I had to go about deeply researching Memphis. So when I put pen to paper or, finger to laptop, I didn't, I did that city and I did the people justice. I also thought that the idea of dealing with reverse migration would be an interesting idea because, yeah, tons and tons of African Americans went from the South to the North. Like, I think I have family from that was from Alabama, Mississippi. I need Henry Louis Gates Jr. here because I don't know specifically, but like, it was Alabama and Mississippi, right? So I don't think I had any family from Tennessee, but not everybody who went to the North stayed there. Some people, it was just like, yeah, this is too much. And, a few people did come back, not a lot, but just a few. And I always thought that it was interesting, like, what was it that would have driven somebody from a place where you could possibly have a better existence? Not the greatest, because it's not like the North was super like, oh yeah, Black people agree. Like, no, the North could be just as horrible, but it just wasn't as much of the lynching and the disappearing of Black people, but it was still heavily, and still is heavily racist. And I mean, like I said, I live in Chicago, and that's a whole nother thing. But I just thought that it was a really interesting idea. So part doctor, that it was an interesting idea, but part of it was that I backed myself into a corner. I had no clue about what I was really gonna do with this story, and had no idea that my debut was gonna blow up the way it did. And had I have known, I probably wouldn't have picked Memphis. Like, no offense, I probably wouldn't. I would probably pick somewhere else, or had Sara stay in Chicago, or but I'm happy that I chose what I chose because of the people that I ended up meeting. Well, I was gonna fly and go to Memphis, but COVID happened. So unfortunately I couldn't fly, but I was put in touch with a lot of awesome people. I did interviews, so I got to use my journalism skills. I read books, newspaper articles, looked at old pictures of like the way certain streets was set up. I was literally, when you redo historical fiction or historical books, you can fall down a rabbit hole. I once spent the better part of like 45 minutes trying to figure out what television show was going to be on a Monday night that one of the characters would be watching. It was the Tales of Wells Fargo that came on Monday nights on ABC. Just so y'all know, that was, and it was for one line in the book. 45 minutes of research, bro. Like, dude, seriously.
I think it's just so fascinating. I want to honor one of my colleagues is on the line, Dr. Sharon Johnson. She's another Zora Neale Hurston scholar, and just I think you guys would connect in the writing and publishing and all that together too. But what I think is so interesting, I think as writers that you start off with a story and you think like you're driving the story, like you're the one that is coming out your imagination. And another way to look at it is sometimes stories ask to be called and they attach to a writer who do their best in telling it. And so I think there's something you're onto with Memphis. And so I'm glad you were backed into a corner and you didn't bow down, that you just went with it, because I think particularly in this moment, right? And so this passage, I'm just going to read it. It was so powerful. This is one of those passages. Well, I have a lot of stickies in my book here, but this was one that was, I think, one of the first ones where it says, what is a Black boy's life? What is a Black girl's life? What value does it have in Memphis or Chicago or New York or anywhere else? What value did Will, and Will is one of the younger characters, the grandson in the story, what value did Will's life have to me until his absence forced me to measure any kind of grudging affection I held back? So Will, there's a separation, a temporary separation, and Sara is kind of all of a sudden feeling all these emotions for this lost child. And so while many of us are still mourning the life of Tyree Nichols, recently taken by local police in Memphis, and our younger nieces and nephews are still seeking understanding of the loss of life of young Adolph Robert Thornton Jr., who was a rapper, some of you may know.
Yep. Yeah.
And the amazing work his wife, I think actually she started even before his passing, Maya J., the organization Black Men Deserve to Grow Old. And so what comes up to me, so it's like all these stories that you bring up Memphis, you talked about the loss of Martin Luther King's life, these young Black men, that lives that we lost. And of course it's happening everywhere, but it was just interesting, that connection to Memphis. And so it seems like having the courage to love, especially for Black women in a society that continues to take the lives of our loved ones, seems like an act of severe faith, resistance, and survival. And so I'm wondering, in the story, the other characters, Will and Mama Sugar, they profess tremendous acts of unconditional love. In fact, I think Mama Sugar, one of the lines, and this wasn't a direct quote, but she said something like, "Don't worry, baby, my love don't break. It may bend and stretch, but it don't break.
Doesn't break. Yeah.
Doesn't break," which is, oh. And so I'm just wondering, what was the influence or thoughts around their influence on Sara and transferring her to heal some deep wounds so that she could again find the courage to love?
Your questions are just so thoughtful and well thought out. So I just all the kudos to you. I think for me, with Will and Mama Sugar, both separately and together, are people who have been very wounded by those they loved, but instead of it making them hard, it makes them softer and more open and more willing to take that risk, because to them, the alternative is to close themselves off. And that seems an alternative that's too grim and too final to bear. So I think with Will and Mama Sugar, their reaction to love and loss is opposite of Sarah's. And it holds a mirror up to Sarah to just say, hey, you can choose this path as well. I think the problem sometimes when people read the Two Lives of Sara, they want her to choose like these healthy options, right? But I mean, like, if you've held trauma, and you haven't had a way to really let it out because everything is so secretive and any utterance of this could put your life at risk, you shut down in the way you need to. You protect yourself in the way that you need to. And it's a realistic response to trauma. I think sometimes people want HEAs or happily ever afters. And I'm like, with all due respect, I don't owe anybody a happily ever after. What I owe you is a damn good book. And that's what I've written, right? So I think with Will and Mama Sugar, you still have these characters to latch onto to see like trauma can affect you deeply, but it doesn't have to put you in such a stagnated spiritual and emotional position that you can't break through and learn to get past it in your own way and learn to love other people. And as I said, again, just giving Sarah the option to say, hey, this isn't the only way to deal with your pain and trauma. You also have this way. Also together with Will and Mama Sugar, it's just that loving grandmother-grandchild relationship that I wanted to pay homage to, because I had them with my grandma. You know what I mean? Not to say she didn't, and there wasn't a time every once in a while she had to kind of, straighten me out, right? But there's so many good memories that I have of her that I wanted to pay homage to that, as well as to my great uncle. He passed recently, and Mr. Vanellis was heavily, like, Mama Sugar was heavily based on my grandma, but Mr. Vanellis was heavily based on my uncle. Wish you would have got a chance to read the book, because he was a great man, but he was a little emotional, so he probably would have teared up. I bet you he would have. But I dedicated it to him and my uncle. Before he passed, like, I just dedicated the book to him and my other uncle. So it's just one of those things where with Will and Mama Sugar, like, I pay homage to my family members, to my childhood, to the love in Black families, and also to, because we focus heavily on the Black men that we lose, as we should, but we don't really focus on the Black women that we lose, right? Or the Black women that go missing, or the Black women who are shot by police, like, or die under police custody, like Sandra Bland and Tatiana Jefferson and Rekia Boyd. Like, their names don't get mentioned nearly as much, right? So then Black women are also set, kind of, once again, kind of set aside for the dominance of Black men. And once again, I'm not saying that it's a huge issue. It deserves recognition. It deserves reparation. It deserves everything, but like, so do we. You know what I mean? When, I can go down the street and go missing, and I don't feel like the police would do everything. And I'm talking about, like, I'm a double degree, got 2 books with HarperCollins. Like, me going missing should be a big deal. But like, I don't feel like if I went missing, God forbid, that, they'd be like, oh, okay. Because I'm not like a slim, petite, Gabby Petito type chick, right? Like, I'm just me, and I'm Black, and I write Black, and I do Black, and I'm Blackity Black, Black, Black. You know what I mean? So I think we need to treat the situation for Black men as equal of importance as we do for Black women, because like, we can save as many Black men as we can, but we don't save Black women. And then we're wondering, like, well, why is there an imbalance now? Right? So I think we just have to do that work on both ends. And I know that's strayed a bit from the subject, but.
No, this is we go where the conversation takes us, and that is such an important part. And I think that's it's if you haven't read the book or if you're reading the book, you know, your characters, I know you kind of like, oh, I just had to write this little backstory to this other book that I did that was like a great bestseller, you know, at Harper's College. But you write your characters are of depth and the complexity. And what I love about it, the book, is that you didn't back away from that, and that it shows that you could have bad things happen to you and still be in a family of love and in a community of love. And I think that's also a story that doesn't get out there a lot. People talk about the trauma and the pain, but that's where it begins and starts, you know, and it's almost like our history even just started like with the transatlantic slave trade, as if we didn't have cultures and language and belief systems and all before that that are still within inside of us. And so you allowed her to be imperfect and perfect, you know, which was beautiful. And I think some, you know, this next question is kind of, it's similar to that, and that talking about safety and that talking about being able to walk down the street. In the very beginning of the book, there's Scarlet Popular is a boarding home. And at that time, a lot of boarders traveling through the South, you know, we couldn't stay in motels or certain sides of the town. So you had to have what they used to call the Chitlin Circuit and kind of know where these safe places were to stay. And so Mama Sugar's house was one of that, called the Scarlet Poplar. And so one of the earlier boarders was Professor Thompson. And I forgot the backstory, but he was heading out to Alabama. And this one line that was in the book that says, "We don't always make it home." And there's a description of, you know, a Black man driving by himself on the back roads from Memphis to Alabama. And at that time, the dangers that kind of lurked around that could happen to him. And then later, there's a description of the meaning of the Lorraine Motel, which as you mentioned, it's the last place where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had his last breath after his assassination. And the narrator asks, "Can we remain protected, untouched there?" And let me just back up. In the story, we learned the Lorraine Motel, prior to Dr. King's assassination, was another kind of accommodation place where Black folks could stay, entertainers and music and speakers and the folks coming to do registration to vote, et cetera. So it was a safe place for us. And so that kind of really even makes learning that part of the history even makes it more egregious that that's also where one of our leaders' lives was taken. But anyway, so the narrative says, "Can we remain protected, untouched here? Our sanctuaries, the places where we find our joy and peace and humanity, never remain sacred. How long before something hateful kills what we hold dear?" And you know, I work in homeless services, and instead of focusing just on people experiencing homelessness, I'm always curious more about how do we create cultures of belonging, because how do we continue to advance King's notion of this beloved community? And so when I think of safe places, I think of beloved communities as kind of being the landscape for these safe places. And so I'm curious in that, what does home mean to you? And what are your thoughts of what it means to the Black collective and the activation of these safe spaces that you offer in the book, from the Scarlet Poplar, the Lorraine Motel, and I know this may sound weird, but if you read it in context of the book, the Mount Carmel Cemetery. What does home mean to you?
I think home for me, despite the hackneyed, you know, and overly cliched euphemisms, home for me really is where my heart is. So I mean, like, I live, you know, on the south side of Chicago. I'm very close to my family, to my mom, to my brother, to my father. I mean, you know, home for me is also where Jonathan Majors is, wherever he is. There I want to be also. But like, but all kidding aside, but like not really Jonathan Majors. I think for me, home is a place where I feel safe to create. I feel safe to just be. I feel safe to like make a mistake. A place where I don't feel judged. A place where if I have doubts and questions, you know, like some place where somebody can just hold me and either tell me it'll be okay or look me in the eye and tell me to get my shit straight. Like, I love you. but there are some things that you need to work on, and it's this and this and this. Home is your soft place to fall, but home is also the place where you learn to grow and evolve and become a better human being. Home can take many different forms, right? So it isn't just one place. It's this transient notion of belonging and acceptance and love. So, home is where I live. Home is where my parents are. Home is where my brother is. Home is where my grandma used to be. But like, home is where like I can go to any one of my 13 first cousins. Yeah, bro, like family, seriously. Like I can't, like it's a lot. It's a lot. Or like, aunts or uncles, or, because you can get all of the things that I described, except Jonathan Majors, at any one of those places, right? So, the Lorraine Motel, since, we already know what's going to happen there, I do that type of foreshadowing when, I talk about how long is, will it be before something sacred is taken away, since like, I wrote this book in 2021, like decades after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. So like, I felt that I had to acknowledge that in some way, even if it's kind of a light reference, since the book kind of stops between like, say 63 and 64. So like we're 4 years prior, but like I can acknowledge that though home should be your safe place, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes bad things happen, right? But what do you do with that? What happens to you as the result of the sanctity of your home somehow being defiled, being marred, right? And then in terms of like Mount Carmel Cemetery, home and the way that African Americans deal with home isn't just on this earthly plane. Home is on a different plane, a heavenly plane, a plane that a lot of us, feel like doesn't stop when your heart does. So, home is very much, as I said, like this very intangible notion of who we are and how we can continue to be who we are. But it isn't one thing in one place at one time.
That is powerful. And I'm so glad we're recording this. I was trying to keep up with some of the gems that you were dropping, like home doesn't stop where your heart does, or that really having it as a place of belonging. I think it's so powerful because I think that's what comes out in the book through some of the tragic moments. It was the way the community still rallied around, and that particular part around it being a place where you're not judged, where people meet you where you are. And Sara, I think some of her healing, or at least initial healing, came through people just accepting her where she was and not trying to change her. And when they did, she had no problem speaking up for
telling
herself.
them to back off, right? Just be like, look, like there's this one funny part in the book that doesn't spoil anything. I base Sara off of me heavily in that Sara has a very smart mouth. And I also made Sara an Aries, which means Sara has very little to no chill. So there's like this one part when it's Sara, Will, Mama Sugar, Jonas, and I think a couple of boarders, and Mama Sugar invited Sara to go to this church function, and Sara isn't feeling it. And Jonas, because he likes Sara, and he knows Sara likes him back, but she just ain't really feeling him enough to really say that to him or to really acknowledge it herself. So Sara's still very prickly. Mama Sugar says, like, we're gonna have, this type of food and that type of food, we're gonna have some pound cake, even though, Sister Dorothy makes it can be a little dry, but we let her have the pound cake, and we gonna be grilling as long as brother Bernard or whatever, he ain't on the grill. Sometimes he burns the meat, but but like it's gonna be a good time with good people, and you should get to know other people. So Sara says, so some burnt meat and some dry pound cake is supposed to be a reason for me to go to this thing. And then Jonas says, like, well, I'm going to be there. And she's like, so your smile into potato salad is a reason for me to go? Like, she has no chill, but nobody says to her, that's mean. Don't say that. You know, it's like Jonas is like, well, you know, I'm gonna be there too, but okay, wow, all right. You know, it's just like they consistently try to keep meeting her like where she's at, but at the same time challenging her to be like, you gotta get, you know, out of yourself, out of the shell, and learn about this community and become a part of the community around you, because that can help with your healing. But yeah, Sarah's based on me. She ain't got no. But like I promise you people, like I'm really, really nice. I am really nice. Like I'm not, ask Delana, I'm like not a mean person or anything like that. It's just, I really like the fact that I could imbue some of my smart acidness to Sarah, and to you know, have that kind of enliven her and make her a little bit more of a modern woman than maybe you would see in the 60s. So
You know, I hadn't even thought about that, like her being in the South in the 60s. And you know, that one scene where she's helped me nail up walls and you know, she's like, yeah, they leaning against the wall I just built, you know, and stuff. So
yeah.
she was kind of badass. And you know, that was it was amazing. I had a question about the title, but I think there's too much of a spoiler in that. So I'm gonna skip that question and I have one last question, but before I get to that, and then we're gonna open it up to the audience. Is there anything else you want to share about Sarah's story, the writing of this story, the writing process, or anything that is just come into mind that you want to share? We have about 3 minutes left before we turn it over to the audience.
Okay, Dr. Will, I think for me, one of the things I really, really take pride in is the amount of research that went into writing this book, and how I try to imbue it with as much Black history and Black culture as I possibly could. I mean, like, aside from mentioning something like there aren't any white characters in this book, which sometimes I think, you know, triggers a few white people who read it and they're just like, well, like this book was boring and I didn't get it. And I was like, because your whiteness wasn't centered. That's why you probably thought it was a little boring, because like so much crap happens in this book. I don't understand how you're bored. Lord knows I wasn't bored writing it. One of the best parts of like research was like researching the music, because you know, like we Black, we all got that one uncle, or I had, rest in peace, Uncle Lavelle, that had all the like old school songs. It was like, hey, you don't know nothing about this. You listen here, listen to this song, listen to that song. You know what I mean? So like I got to go back and research a lot of songs, particularly Sam Cooke and Nina Simone songs, because they like, to me, like play this kind of integral part between who Sarah is and who Jonas is. And I ended up learning about this one really cool Nina Simone song called Black Swan. If you don't know it, Google it. It's beautiful and it's haunting. And yeah, I loved researching the music and the literature, like, you know, Dr. Orduña said, Langston Hughes, Ornell Hurston, Ralph Ellison. I mentioned Lorraine Hansberry, I think Gwendolyn Brooks. Like I'm trying to throw everything in there that I can within reason to just show like just my love and my pride of my culture in the diaspora. And I hope that comes along and comes across in the book.
No, I think it totally does. It's like it's an anthology of our history of that time. And that's what I'm saying. This was no easy book. This wasn't just a backstory for another book. To me, it's like you captured so much of that time, but you brought joy in with it. And you brought in, like you said, those cultural attributes that other writers don't write about. And I think your book is so important, particularly at this time when African American history is under attack and trying to be erased out of history. Like a child picking up your book today would be like, you know, a curious child like Will's what, like, I think he ends up being around 12.
Yeah, he's between kind of like a 11 and 13ish range around like by the time we end the book. And yeah, I mean, like I can definitely see my book being banned eventually, like, you know, somebody being like, this is too Black. And it's just like, I'm like, cool, you do realize that by telling people not to read this book, a lot of people are going to read this book. So go to town. Like, have a good one.
That's so true. Okay, I was trying to find too. There was a song when Jonas and Sarah go to, is it the Iris Cup? The little
The
juke
Iris
joint.
Club. There were
Uh-huh.
2 songs. There was one, I'll Take Care of You by Bobby Blue
Yes.
Bland.
Oh my goodness. I hadn't heard of that song. Oh, I loved it. I kept on replay.
Girl, that song. And you know Bobby Blue Bland, like, you know, he was the same dude who wrote Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City. Bro, like, woo! Too much. I can't.
Oh my God, I
Okay.
loved it.
Yeah, but
So
Bobby
good.
Blue Bland with that organ in the background, you'd be like, bro.
I was like, and you could just see them hugging and dancing and
Yeah,
shaking and the
you
tables
can
and the
literally
food and
picture it. Like you see it. Like you cannot help but to see it. And that was like one of, like, I didn't know about that song. I had to do like love songs or soul songs of like the 1960s or whatever. And that was like one of the songs. And as soon as I listened to it, and I listened to it once, I was like, that's the song. Like, that is the song. Like the same thing with Nina Simone and Black Swan. I was like, that song. Or Sam Cooke and What a Wonderful World. I was like, you know, what a wonderful world this could be. I was like, that song. Like, I knew the songs like as soon as I heard them. Or Raindrops by D. Clark. Like, like I can't. Let's not, because we'll be here like a whole hour. Like,
but you know, you raise an important part. Like you were researching it, but you still had your reference of your family, you know, the memories of your grandmother, your great uncle, your other uncle, your mom, your 13 first cousins, and all of that. And I think far too often when we have our family around us, we don't think to ask them, what kind of music did you listen to growing up? Or like what influenced you? And so I hope your book also raises those, you know, encourages people to ask those questions. And sometimes, yeah, family has secrets that you're going to get a stone face. And, you know, you just kind of note that because somebody's going to tell you what happened. It's going
that
to
part.
come out
And
somehow.
it's gonna come out somehow. And sometimes over a game of spades, if somebody's losing, because that's how you be like, that's why James ain't your daddy. Wait,
Yep.
what?
Exactly.
See, you should have got
Exactly.
that book. You should have got that book. That's why James ain't your daddy. See, look, many a family has been broken up over a game of spades, bro. Like, listen.
That's right. So I hope talk to your folks and find out those family
Please.
stories. All right. Okay. So now I know we kind of we went deep or whatever, but I got the deepest question for you. Okay. And this is audience participation. So you can raise your hands on this one. One, you know, in toward the end of the story, you know, there's a boarding house, different boarders come through or whatever. And you know, people are you try to sense people out by their mannerism and their food preferences, the accents, you know, just a
So
little
much
bit.
good food in this book. So much good
Oh
food.
yeah, I
Mouthwatering.
want the recipes for the sweet rolls, but that's another story. So there's this one boarder who comes in and all of a sudden he's there for breakfast and people are just appalled. And they're just, I mean, just appalled because he has the audacity, I would say to ruin, but he has the audacity to put some sugar on his grits.
Grits, yeah.
And everyone's saying, well, man, you putting sugar on them grits? And the guy says, well, how else do you take them? So I want to ask all of you, raise your hand if you are for savory grits, butter, and just maybe a little something else or some shrimp or something. Or do you put sugar on your grits? So first I'm going to say raise your hand if you for savory grits are your preference. Okay.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
Now how many for sugar? Okay,
You
we have
don't
a
put
few.
sugar on yogurts, Delana, but we getting ready to talk about that.
I think Selena is the only one with their hand up on the sugar. You all missed it.
No. There was a few people. There was, I
there
want
were
to say, there was like 3 or 4 people who raised their hands.
So, okay, first off, yes, I like to add jelly to my grits. Okay, yes, I add jelly to my grits. I eat jelly on my grits with bacon and eggs. If jelly is not available, then I will add sugar. But that is, you know, savory grits is, I'm not saying it's nasty or anything, but I prefer sweet grits with, yes, my jelly on it. And I don't care what any of you say. Like,
you could at least do preserves. Like, that. My problem is like how you mix it in. Like jelly and grits. Like, it's 2 different
Kathy,
types of.
You know, mix it in like Salt Bay. Just put your wrist.
No, that's not Salt Bay. That's destruction. That's disrespectful.
All
Like,
right, we will be here all day. So
Hey,
let's
I'm
turn it
from
over.
Louisiana, okay? We got some good food
Wow.
on there, but I will stick with my jelly and the grits. And that is
they literally
it.
do savory grits. They do shrimp.
Well, baby, I'm from, I do the jelly and my grits. It's the best way. You know, it's
No,
not
no,
my
no.
fault that you
That's
guys
what I
are
said. I'm praying for
uncultured.
you on Sunday. It's cool that you be delivered from the jelly. That you be delivered from it.
Never. I don't want to be delivered. I love it there.
Well, everyone has their own preference and their own style. It shows their roots. Obviously, you're not from Memphis, but that's okay. We still love you. But let's turn it now to over to questions. Does anyone, we're such a small group, feel free. Okay, Robert, thank you. I was going to say raise your hand or come off mute. Robert, please go ahead and welcome, first of all, and please ask your question.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to welcome Catherine virtually to Santa Monica. It's a pleasure to have you. I've been listening. It's just fascinating.
Thank you.
My question, there's a lot of self-interest in my question, but I'd be fascinated with your answer. Quite a while ago in my life, I left a very non-diverse suburb of Hartford, Connecticut, and I went to graduate school at the University of Chicago, and I lived in Hyde Park, and I liked it so much that I ended up staying there and living there for 7 years. And I went obviously to a city that was very diverse. It was very everything. It was very enormous. It was very dangerous. It was very tense, but it was very energizing, very enthusiastic, and it really made a big influence on my life. And I haven't realized it. I don't think I realized it quite then when I was undergoing it, and probably have realized it later in life, how it molded and shaped me. So I'd like to know a little bit more, whatever you can share with us, about your upbringing in Chicago area, in Southern Illinois, and how that influenced your writing. I'd be interested in that.
Well, I didn't grow up in Southern Illinois. I grew up in the South Side of Chicago.
South Side of Chicago. I meant to say that. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of how I grew up and where I grew up, the South Side of Chicago and the West Side of Chicago get a bad rap, and it always pisses me off because it's kind of like, oh, like, well, you come from the South Side of Chicago, as if that's a detriment for me when it's really a pro, right? So for me, growing up the way that I grew up, in a 2-parent household, my dad worked for the post office. My mom, as I said, was a principal. So for me, and I was not the only one who had like a 2-parent household. And some people have 1-parent households, fine, whatever. But the thing is, like, all of our parents were invested in us becoming as successful as we could possibly be. I went to a very good public school, which over-prepared me for high school. And then that high school, Morgan Park, over-prepared me for college. And then, like, I went to U of I, and I'm like struggling to figure out like how my white counterparts don't know how to write a term paper. And I'm like, bro, like, you didn't do this? Like, how? Like, what's wrong? So I think for me, and I kind of come in with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because of how where I live is perceived. So I always do my best to show the dynamic part, not saying the South Side of Chicago doesn't have its issues or the West Side doesn't, but all parts of Chicago have their issues. All parts of Los Angeles have their issues. All parts of Santa Monica have their issues. I just think that somehow when it's dealing with a marginalized population of Black people or brown people, it is aggrandized in such a way that we're all put into this one pot. And nobody says like, but like all of these good things are also happening on the South Side, or these things are happening on the West Side. And then it widens the chip on my shoulder, because then when I would go to job interviews and, you know, I would talk about where I'm from, then there are all of these assumptions, almost like, so you learned to read? Like, bitch, I've been reading since I was like 4. Like, what do you like? Where do you think I grew up? Like, how did you think I grew up? You know, like, my brother isn't a gangbanger. He owns his own business. I have, like I have 2 books. My parents will be married for almost 45 years. Yes, my name is Catherine, and it's not whatever you think it should be, right? Not saying anything against those names, but you know what I mean? It's just so aggravating, I think. So I kind of always kind of come to certain things, just ready to have to defend who I am and where I'm from, because I've always had to defend who I am and where I'm from. You know what I mean, Robert?
Yes. Yes.
And thank you very much for the question, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Adria is next.
Hey, Alisa. First and foremost, thank you for inviting us to this event, because how did I not know about it? I don't know. But anyway, Catherine, it's so nice to talk to you and meet you. And I've just been enjoying this session. So I do have a question for you. Well, I have 2 weird questions for you. But so the first question is, so I myself also write, and I just recently, just like last week or the beginning of the year, actually picked up a book that I hadn't touched in 17 years. Like I said, I was writing it back then, and I'm 45 now. So now's the season, because I'm very big into seasons. So my question is this: as a fellow writer, and then you as an accomplished writer, what are some quirky writing processes do you have? Are you a Post-it note girl? Are you the girl that got to be writing in Starbucks? Do you have to be sitting under a tree? Like, what are some of the quirkiness of your writing process? I know you talked a lot about your research, so I'm just trying to find out more about you. And then the second question, which will be a cuckoo question, but I ask everybody this question. For me to get to know someone, I always ask this question: are you the noun or the verb? So when did you realize that you were no longer the verb, meaning you were a person who just did the action you wrote, but you realized you were an actual writer, the noun?
Okay, so in terms of quirky,
Did you get that?
No, I got you. No,
Okay.
Adri, I got you.
Okay.
So, in terms of quirky processes, girl, I don't sit under the tree because I don't like the outside. Robert knows that Chicago has some really nice outside spaces. I don't know if you were still here when Millennium Park opened, but we have like a lot of really nice outdoor spaces. I hate the outdoors. So I'm not, I'm not going to the Starbucks, because the only thing I'm doing is like just drinking Frappuccinos, and I ain't right. Good luck. Yeah. So I think for me, my quirky writing processes are when an idea comes to me about a book, I write it, and it doesn't matter where I am, I write it down. So like I have like this piece of paper because of the book that I'm working on right now. So this is like a plot point. Most of the times when I figure something out, I email it to myself immediately. Why? Because as writers, we'll lie to ourselves and say, oh, I'm going to remember this. And you don't, because like, you don't. You're not Good Will Hunting, right? So I will email myself bits of dialogue. I will email myself, like today, I figured out that I wanted one of my main characters to be working on a dissertation, and what part of her dissertation like something would say. So like I'm like writing out like this quote about her dissertation. Why? Because I knew good and doggone well that I wasn't going to remember that. So I went ahead and I emailed it to myself, and I have like a folder dedicated to each book that I write. So I email it to myself so I don't forget. And also because I'm paranoid, if somebody ever said, she stole my idea, I literally have. I stole your idea? Good luck. I literally have all the versions of the book, all of the stuff that I emailed myself to the book, the book about. So there's like, I have literally like a digital trail. You know what I mean? To go back, and I also go back and I love to go back and look at when I started a book to where it is now, because it's like I always, just like to pat myself on the back. When did
you have to do that sometimes?
Right? You know what I mean? Especially when, because Saving became my initial, my debut novel, the first draft was hot garbage.
I was going to ask you, how many drafts did it take you to get to your finished product?
Okay, so with Saving Ruby King, it took me 5 years to write. And I always say, like, they're like, oh, it was your first book. It was 20 books. I just had to figure out which book I was writing. It was literally like 20 books. Like, because my silly behind decided for my first book, I'm writing like a multi-POV non-linear narrative.
Yeah.
With the Two Lives of Sara, it was a lot easier for me to get a hold of because it's singular, linear. It was singular and linear. But see, then I'm dealing with a whole bunch of issues with, you know, research, or not issues, but like I have to do all of this research.
Correct.
So like everything kind of has its pros and its cons, right? So that's kind of like what it is with like the quirkiness. In terms of the noun and the verb question, I pretty much always have been a noun. I always considered myself a writer.
Yes.
Right. Once again, it was just about me. Well, I can't make a living writing books. Turns out I could. Like I just became a full-time writer. Right. So, you know, I think for me, it wasn't. It was a verb until I was about 32.
Okay.
Once I hit 32, that's when it became the
when it
noun.
came
And
out.
that's when I decided, like, okay, I'm doing this and I'm going to try to figure this out. And there were a lot of starts and stops and discouragements and like weeping in the corner and gnashing of teeth. But eventually, you know, I became the noun instead of the verb.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Because, you know, there's all nouns and verbs in the world. But that's a whole nother bookstore event.
I appreciate the question, Adria. I really, really do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adria. And Afro. And you're not going, you know, you don't have blurred vision. They're twins.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Oh, no. Look.
Make sure you
I
see
love
it. Okay, thanks, Alisa, for inviting me. I have a question as a twin. Okay, so my sister's a little shy, but she is absolutely one of the most phenomenal literature writers I've ever known. She has 3 books, actually, that she stopped in the middle of that are phenomenal. I know them from backhand and fronthand. I sometimes have to remind her what the character was. But I say this to say, as a sister or what was your support system like? Because in December is when I told my twin, okay, if you don't get with this talent and use what God gave you, he's gonna snatch it and give it to me. So what I want her, how do you support someone who's writing a book? Or what was your support system like when you've been writing a book? Or did you have any support?
Oh, no. I definitely had support. Luckily, I didn't have one of those, you know, families that's just like, you're not going to make it and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, Lord. When I hear about families like that with creators, it always like crushes me a little bit. It breaks my heart because my family is so supportive. And I'm not just talking about my mom, my dad, and my brother. They were insanely supportive. My extended family is crazy, ignorant support. Like, you know, I'm a traditionally published author and they on the corner hawking my books like, yo, my cousin got this book out. You might want to go ahead, check this out. My brother was in an airport showing this woman, she's a stranger. Hey, so this is my sister's cover for her debut novel. I'm like, I literally couldn't ask for a better family. That being said, my mom, my brother, and my dad all figured out ways to help me. My dad and I have like this kind of, well, not now, but like when I was younger, especially in like my teens and 20s, it was like really tumultuous. It was like very up and down. When I started writing the book, you know, Saving Ruby King, I decided to do multi-POV, and silly me, I thought that I created it. Like, I didn't know that there were other books with multi-POV in them. I really didn't. And that was the year the 12 Tribes of Hattie came out by Ayanna Mathis. And when I read the 12 Tribes of Hattie, I was literally sitting on this couch with all these cute stuffed animals. I'm not going to show them because I don't want y'all to think I really am crazy. But I was like sitting on this couch and I'm just like, forget this book, I don't even know why I decided to try to write. And my dad is like, yeah, you know, Catherine, you know, just write the book. I don't see why, you know what I mean? Why you don't think you don't have anything to say. You have plenty to say. So just sit down and write your book, you know. And then, you know, my brother, I always joke about the movie Good Will Hunting and how like my dad is the professor and my mom is Robin Williams. She's like the therapist and I'm Will and my brother's Chucky, because my brother is the kick you in the butt type. Like, it's not a wall. It's a hurdle. Jump the hell over it. Like, you ain't got time to feel sorry for yourself about stuff. You know what I mean? Like, all you got time to do is write this book. So write the DAMN book. You got the talent. Just go do it. Like, you know, and my mom is very maternal and just is very much like, you know, you know, Pookie, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I'm just so proud of you. And I just love you so much. You know what I mean? So like, I got like all the best of both worlds. And then I finally write the book, it gets published. And then I got my whole family just being like, get a book, get a book. And I'm, you know, so I literally couldn't ask for a better support system. Like I really can't. So I think the thing is, April, be there for your sister, support your sister. Also know when to kick her in the ass and tell her like, yo, all of this kind of like, woe is me, like, stop, go do this. Like, we done read this, we know you bomb.
Absolutely.
So act like you bomb and like finish the story. I'm not gonna listen to this anymore. I want to listen to this next chapter.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much.
So I'm sorry, Adria, but
I
we all
that
need some
quick
tough
slip.
love.
Tough love.
This is awesome. I think we have time if there are any additional questions that anyone has. Great ones that you guys have asked so far. I just want, let me just acknowledge the chat too. When you were talking your story, like the influences of the South Side and how people sometimes misjudge it. People were reminding us that Michelle Obama comes straight from the South Side, and President Obama, that's where he spent when he relocated there too. So
yeah, so many awesome writers. I mean, Gwendolyn Brooks lived on the South Side. I mean, Richard Wright, like so many people, you know what I mean? Like, so the South Side has such an illustrious history, and that needs to be shown a lot more. Absolutely. And can I just say, like, hands off, I just want to say thank you to the wonderful Delana Benekama, because she's awesome, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. And I love her so much, and she always believed in me. And when we, you know, when my movie when my book prayerfully eventually goes, you know, becomes a movie, I'll invite Jonathan Majors, and we can both see what's up. Like, let's just go see what's up with Jonathan Majors. It's fine. It'll be okay. It'll be okay.
we got to make
Kathy
sure
has that. She has that image of his Essence cover just burned into her memory right now.
No, I literally have one of his Vanity Fair photos. That's the wallpaper on my phone right now. Like, I'm not even playing with you. No, I will send it to you. But anyway, let's remain professional. I'm just saying.
Catherine, Karen asks, is anyone in your family a writer, or do they write as well?
Karen, not. Oh, no. My cousin Jeremiah, he's becoming a young budding writer. He's in his 20s. Before Jeremiah, there was just me. Rumor has it, though, that my great grandma Georgia was a writer for one of the politicians on the South Side of Chicago, and that's where I am said to get my writing talent from. It's from my great aunt Georgia, my mom's mom's mom. But other than, you know, myself and now Jeremiah, no, I mean, my family is very, very much education oriented. But, you know, we have all types, you know. I have a cousin who like is high in the automotive industry. I have a cousin who is a principal at an alternative school. My brother runs like 3 or 4 businesses, like one is art-based, one is cannabis-based, and then like he has like a health business. Like I'm not doing all of that, but you know, he make, God bless him, you know, he just does a lot. So like everybody in my family is like multi-talented, but in terms of the writers, it's me and now my cousin Jeremiah, and I'm trying to, you know, if he asks me a question, I try to answer it for him and everything like that. So
That's great.
That is awesome. Well, if there are no other questions, can you please all join me in just giving Catherine another huge round of applause and congratulations for this book and for tonight participating. We're just so grateful. And thank you to Delana and to you, Catherine and Karen, for allowing me to be here to help moderate as well. So I will.
Dr. Orduña, you're so awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Your book, it's hard. I was like, I'm kind of like Delana. I'm like, okay, I want to know what happens now. So I got to go get, what is it? Saving Ruby?
Saving Ruby King.
Saving Ruby King. I got to get that one. And I'm still like, okay, so what happens now? What happens now? So I look forward, even if it's totally different, I look forward to your next book.
Thank you so much, everybody who's here. I appreciate the comments and the questions, and you All have been phenomenal, and I'm looking at all of the comments and I'm trying not to blush, but y'all got me red in the face for real.
So you mentioned that you're working on another book. Can we ask about that?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm taking a break, not permanently. I'm taking a break from the Saving Ruby King universe to write something completely different. I am focusing on a community worker who has a very different background and who wants to help find this missing Black girl on the south side of Chicago. And there are a lot of twists and turns. You think that, she may be somewhere somebody might have, not the way you think. And when you find out what really happens and the reasons behind her disappearance that are both let's say ethereal as well as earthbound, you will just be like, what the hell? So it's a book of different genres. So we have urban fiction, we have some speculative fiction in there, and it's definitely going to be blackity black, as all my books are. The book, the working title now is called The Four Gospels of Jessa Crane. But book titles change. So, prayerfully, that will be the title. If not, it will be something else. And once I'm done with that book, I will return to the Saving Ruby King universe, because I am not done. I still feel like there's like another book or two left in that universe. And I keep getting hounded in the best way by people who want to know eventually like what happens, and have everything kind of tied up in somewhat of a bow, and I plan on doing that. So
I cannot wait. I cannot wait for this new book. I can't wait to read what happens in the Saving Ruby King universe. I think I'm probably one of those people who has been pestering you about what's happening.
No, not pestering. You're very you know what you want. You know what you want, and
Yeah.
I'm not gonna despise you for it. I love you for it. And I mean, you help me become a better writer, because I gotta hurry up and write, because if I don't, I might get another DM. And not about grits. Not about grits.
Look, let's not start on the grits conversation again. But yeah, it's always such a pleasure to have you here. So again, thank you both so much. Dr. Orduña, excellent questions, excellent conversation with, Catherine. And I just dropped some links into the chat. For those of you who don't know, we have some other upcoming events for Black History Month. One is a link to information about the Greens Festival. That was postponed due to inclement weather. So that's going to be on March 4th. And then there is another event, Black History Month Festival on March 11th by the Santa Monica Black Lives Association. And have Crazy Bone there, and some other people, live music, food. So just check out those links. And again, thank you so much for April, do you have something?
Real quick, Karen put a good question in the chat. She was asking Catherine, do writers get the final word on what the book is titled, or do publishers somewhat control that?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. It's a collaboration, right? So the Two Lives of Sara was originally titled Becoming Sara King, but they thought the title was too similar to Saving Ruby King, even though that was my intention. So they wanted something a little bit different. So we worked and collaborated on a different title, just like with the cover. You work and collaborate, like, they'll ask you, what are some of your ideal covers? And you give them some ideal covers and they come up with something fantastic like this. So, it just really depends. It really is a collaboration. It's not like we're doing this and you have no say in it. The publisher, my editor, really wants to know my input about everything from the title to her edits to, you know, how we're going to be marketing the book and where we market the book. So it's a collaborative process and one that I like. And actually, I like the Two Lives of Sara. I like that title a little bit more than Becoming Sarah King. But, you know, I was, of course, married to Becoming Sarah King. So it took a little while for the Two Lives of Sara to grow on me. But once it did, it absolutely did. That's why I said, you know, the Four Gospels of Jessica Crane may very well be called something else. So, I mean, I don't hold myself to the title anymore because Saving Ruby King was originally called Potter's Wheel. Becoming Sarah King was the Two Lives of Sara. Look, I'ma just call it book and see what happens. I don't know.
That's great. Thank you.
You know, something,
Thank you.
Something funny that I want to mention. One of our guests tonight was asking about picture of Sarah on the cover. She thought that the picture looks like Amanda Gorman, who is a poet.
It does look a little like Amanda Gorman, straight up. I didn't even notice that. Yeah.
It does.
That does. See, and now you can't unsee it.
Sorry.
Now you can't unsee it. Now I'm just like, that looks like a more mature. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, shoot, if Amanda want to go ahead and blur my next book.
I was just talking to a
I'll be like,
coworker
sis,
about
we'll put your face on the cover. How about that?
Anyway, do we have any other questions before we end this great conversation? We still have about 8 minutes, so.
If not, then I can go through real briefly the publishing process since we do have some budding writers here.
Sure.
Oh, and I'm getting a lot of nods. Okay. So with the publishing process, and Brian, you got me kind of rolling over here, sir. And I don't know if I'm gonna be doing stand-up. You know, I can make people laugh, but you know, that's not my gift. Not like that. But God bless you, okay. So in terms of publishing, I've tried to break it down in like a 3 or 4 step process, but there are a lot of many steps in between. So the first step is to write your book. Okay. Thank you, Adria. Write your book. I'm sure it's wonderful. Your sisters out there pubbing you like my brother pubs me. Okay. So finish writing your book. You're 45, even though you look 34. Once you're done with your book, have trusted people read it and give you any feedback so you can shore it up, make it the best book you can. You will need to get a literary agent if you want to be traditionally published. If you want to do self-publishing, that's fine too. I would still suggest you get an editor to look over your book and make sure that everything is flowing the way it needs to plot-wise. Once again, this is directed to everybody and anybody who wants to write a book. I went traditionally published. A lot of people I know did self-publishing and have, you know, self-publishers have like great success. I had great success with traditional publishing, so that's really the only platform I can talk to you from. You get a literary agent. The way you get a literary agent is to do what's called a query letter. In a query letter, you will tell the prospective literary agent who you are, what your book is about. That means the plot, the stakes, and you got to leave it on a cliffhanger because you don't want them to be like, and so Carl Thomas killed Sarah at the end. Like, no, you don't want to. You want to leave it on a cliffhanger. I would suggest if you have any like writing credentials, like maybe, you know, get a short story or 2 published in a couple of different journals. Doesn't need to be super prestigious. Just, you know, make sure you have like a little bit of work out there. If you don't, that's fine too. You have other credentials like, oh, I have a PhD or an MFA or blah, blah, blah. So get that, you know, that query letter done. Get a list of reputable literary agents. If there are books that you like, at the end of the books and the acknowledgments, most writers acknowledge their literary agent. So, you can find them that way. You can Google, Twitter was, before Elon, was a really great place for me to develop the writing, developing the writing community. And there are so many really good editors, literary agents out there who want, diverse books. Age ain't nothing but a number. So because a lot of people will just be like, well, I'm this age. Like, so, and like, go write your book. Once you get the literary agent, the literary agent will, you and him or her, them, whatever pronoun, you guys will work on your book together to polish it up even more. Once that's done, you will go on what's called submission, right? That's when you sit back, anxiously as hell, and your literary agent goes and queries your books to a set of editors at publishing houses and says, I got this great book. Adria Brody wrote this. She's the next Toni Morrison. Y'all don't even know. You know what I mean? Like, beloved.
Keep speaking it.
Yeah, like, man, like, you want Beloved, you want Sula Baby, you want Sula, you want Tar Baby, you want, you know what I'm saying? You want the Street Band Peach. You need to read Brody's book. You don't even know. You know what I mean? And then they will send the book. And sometimes it happens, like I've known, I've heard stories about editors, true stories about editors, where within a day, an editor scoops it up. Or I know other writers who had their books on submission for like a solid year. Right? My book was on submission, Save Me Be King was on submission for only 6 weeks. I have a friend, Nancy Johnson, who wrote The Kindest Lie, phenomenal book. Hers was only 3 weeks, but it varies, right? If more than one person wants your book, you go what's called to auction. I know how it sounds to Black people, but trust me, this is one you want to be a part of. If that's the case, then the highest bidder of your book, you can go with them if you want to, you don't have to. Would just say like, hey, we're going to offer, $50,000 on your book. The other people are only offering 30. But I would suggest work with the editor who you really like. You'll talk to every editor who wants to offer in your book. Work with the one you vibe with the most. Because if you just gonna go with the money, it may not always be a good look. Just go with the one you vibe with. I vibed with my editor, Laura Brown. She was great. She is great. And it's been like, a decent experience for me. And so, and after that, you will have to wait anywhere from a year to a year and a half to have your book published. And that year you are working on revising your book again. Then you go through line edits. Then you go through copy edits. Then they will show you covers, and you have to write a dedication and acknowledgments, and then you have a book launch, and you pray that enough people buy your book that you make back your advance and do royalties, which I'm sure you'll have no problem doing. And you get to kind of sit and relish the fact that you wrote a book and it's on bookshelves and it's published. So I'm looking forward to seeing your book on shelves.
Thank you for that.
That's
really
in
awesome.
April, you be her accountability buddy. Okay, make sure.
That's awesome to know, because I'm sure it's a birthing process, right? So
well, I haven't given birth yet. I'll have kids eventually.
Me either, but I gotta go with the book.
Yeah, because if that was the case, I'd have been asked for epidural. You feel me?
Well, thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you so much, Dr. Orduña. Again, this event is brought to you by the Black History Month Committee in collaboration with the Santa Monica Public Library. Hope that you enjoyed this discussion tonight, and we'll see you again next year.
Thank you so much.
And Sina, just to answer your question, yes, I do feel pressure, but the pressure is more so based on me to write the book. But I learned to deal with it because I have a great support system. And so I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Thank you. It does.
Thank you
Good
so
night,
much,
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a wonderful
Thank you.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. and have a nice night.
All right. Thank you so much again. I appreciate it, Elena.
Oh,
I love you, girl.
Amazing.
thank
Amazing.
you. So great. Yeah, really enjoyed it, Catherine. Thank
Yeah.
you. And
Thank
thanks,
you so
Elena,
much.
for bringing this to our attention. Bye. We'll see you in less than 2 years for your next book.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I will do this. No problem. I promise.
Awesome. We would love to have you back.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.